Hey, folks. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So, have you ever come across someone, anyone, where you have had this immediate connection or, a respect for this person? Well, today's podcast, Joshua, Colonel Joshua McConkey, is a guy that within minutes I knew that I would listen to him, I would respect him, and I would follow him as a leader. I mean, granted, we have different lifestyles. I'm a West Coast guy. He's a Midwest guy. But everything he has to say really falls in line with what I would say is my belief and my structure and how I like to live. We're going to talk about some of the importance of leadership and mentorship and how we can help shape the future of the next generation. And also we were going to touch a little bit on youth today and how they have unique challenges because of the digital age and social media. We're going to jump into talking about the standards in society and how they've been lowered and how that's really led to some entitlement, or, that's what we as adults say about some of the kids, that they feel that they have an entitlement. So I'd like for you to really sit back and listen to all this, because there are a lot of things that Colonel Joshua McConkey goes over, and he really hammers in on community involvement and support systems and things like that. We're also going to touch on mental health, and that's going to involve both the youth in America and also the older people meaning in the 40s. So we want to be able to recognize what our breaking point is, because all of us do have a breaking point, and we need to recognize that point. So please sit back, watch, listen, and enjoy this podcast, because it is a very good podcast, if I do say so myself. And remember, please be responsible and have your pets spayed or neutered. Thanks.
Welcome to Amazing People, Amazing Things with your host, Chuck Tuck.
You're this guy.
I've been very blessed. I came from a very small town. I was the first McConkey to go to college, ever. So my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my father were all railroaders. So going way back, old Milwaukee Railroad days, that went bankrupt in the 80s, and my dad jumped on with the Burlington Northern and got moved out to western Nebraska. So I grew up in a very small town, less than about 8,000 people. We have more cows than people where I grew up. Just kind of hard-working agricultural, ranch land, farmland, and railroading. And growing up, I wanted a little bit more. I wanted to be able to see the world a little bit. So I went to college and medical school, military, Army National Guard. Got my tour in Iraq in 2007, and that's kind of opened up a lot of things for me. It changed my life a lot. Moved overseas. I've practiced medicine in Australia and New Zealand. I'm fellowship boarded in Australasia as well. And then, came back to the military for Air Force, and I'm a commander now at Andrews Air Force Base.
Wow. Well, thank you and congratulations on all of your success. But just hearing that brief story about your background kind of tells me why you have the book, Weight Behind the Spear.
Yeah.
And your focused devotion and love of family and country. So I hope I'm not wrong in saying that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
But yeah, what is the main focus of your book, if you could tell us?
Yeah, so that's my personal leadership ethos. And I can show you here, I've got one of my coins. This is always a lot of fun. It shows it pretty well on camera. So this is one of my personal challenge coins that I give men and women under my command that do amazing things. And so when I took command, it should show up here for you, but this is my personal leadership coin. And you'll see there on the bottom, gravitate hastum. That's Latin, gravity of the spear.
For those of you who are listening to the podcast and not seeing the video, just want to give you a quick description of the coin, the medallion that Joshua is holding. Around the edge of the circle medallion, it reads Colonel Joshua Blackjack McConkey at the top. That's at the top. And on the bottom, it says Gravitate Hastum. And then in the center, it's the American flag with an eagle and a shield. And right below the shield, it reads integrity, service, honor, and professionalism.
Weight behind the spear. And I've worked with special forces operators, men and women that do some really amazing things. That's the tip of the spear. When you talk about people kicking down doors, taking out bin Laden, when you see the Thai soccer team that was stranded in that cave in 2018, and you pick up a bat phone, like the red bat phone, I need the best person on the planet to save these kids or they're all going to die. This is who you call. That's the tip of the spear. I'm more of the weight behind the spear. I don't kill people and do crazy things. I save lives. I don't take them. And the best thing that we have, the best resource we have in this country, it's people. It's coaches, teachers, volunteers. When you look at these heroes, because that's what these guys are, they all had a favorite coach or a mentor or a teacher that really gave them amazing confidence to do those things, because their confidence is crazy. Their egos are through the roof too, because these guys, they're amazing individuals. They're essentially freaks. Okay, like, nobody can do what they do, and America needs to focus on being the weight behind that spear for our future heroes. Like, these kids in school, one of them is going to be a special operator. One of them may be the first person on Mars. And
Yeah.
We did them a lot of disservice over the past couple of years. This COVID generation, right? We shut them out of schools. We shut them out of their churches. They can't communicate with one another other than over like iPads. The communication skills aren't there. As a commander, I see that. And as an emergency doctor, I see the anxiety, the depression, the suicides. And it's hard to watch. And somebody's got to do something. So I wrote a book.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Somebody needs to do something, and I'm glad you wrote this book. I want to kind of dig a little bit more into your thoughts as far as, where do you have a thought of how or where this downfall, that might not be the right word, but the downfall of youth in America started?
Yeah, so it's just a change. And someone had talked with me recently. It's a generational divide. So I was born in the 70s. I graduated high school in 1996. They're really the iPhone generation. So the generation of Americans that have never experienced life without instant access to information, social media, everything on their fingertips at any second. When I grew up, there was lots of boredom. You went in the backyard, you played some games, you played some baseball, you just made something up. I mean, you didn't have a phone with instant entertainment and video and graphics like 24/7. So that generation that has not known anything but, the digital world and iPhones, it's a generational divide that we need to somehow try to breach, overcome that and help this generation. So I don't know if it's a downfall as much as it is just a completely different mindset that I basically don't understand as someone born in the 70s. But I have 3 kids, and so I'm learning to understand that. And how can we talk? They even have their own language, and with their terms. And it's just something, it's a challenge that I want Americans to embrace. And this book is that call to action.
And you're right, but my calling it a downfall is incorrect. It's like you said, it's a generational divide because, as you stated, that the kids that have grown up over the past 10 years are all growing up in this digital age, whereas you and I, we had that analog border of the analog to digital.
Do you remember?
Life.
Do you remember encyclopedias?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you had to
I
find.
still have some.
Yeah, the reference volumes, and you could search something up, and then there's like 28 different volumes by A, B, C, D, and you had to look something up, and that's the only way you were going to find any information, and that's 5, 10, 15 years. The immediate access to current real time information now is mind boggling, and they've never known anything but that.
Yeah, I look at it as where kids growing up today need to be more of a research analyst to figure out and to sift through all the information that's out there to find the right one. Where perhaps you and I even using maps. It's. I mean, we look it up and we said, all right, there's the road. We follow that direction.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like I said, kids now have it in some ways easier, but it's easier to do things, but it makes life more difficult, I think, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because then some of the if that phone tells them to take a right and drive off a cliff, they're just going to take a right. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
it's hey, but the phone said. I'm like, well, I know, but there's construction, or there's, it's just a different world, and there's a lot of fun and there's challenges to that, but America's always up for challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where family comes into play. Parents. And I'm going to say something that might be controversial, perhaps to you or to many people out there, is I think that many parents need to get back into being parents and not friends of their children, because you need to gain that respect of the children, and not to say that, hey, we're on an even playing field. I'll listen to what you tell me, and I'll do that. To me, I don't think that's the right way. I may be too old fashioned and saying,
Yeah.
I'm the disciplinarian, I'm the parent, I'm the father.
And you'll see the difference. So my kids, they come home when Deadpool, the new Deadpool movie was released. And my twins were 11 at the time. My son Luca is 13. And, well, we want to watch the new Deadpool. I'm like, you guys, it's rated R #1. And let me go watch the movie. So I watched the movie. No, not in a million years are my 11-year-old children going to watch that movie. It's an awesome movie. I love the movie. And it's not appropriate for an 11-year-old. Oh, but Joe or Lisa or their parents, or they're letting them, like, listen, I'm not here to make any judgments, but I think that is egregious. I personally don't agree with that. There's lots of different parents, so your mom and dad are not comfortable with that. There's lots of different parenting styles, and you do see that where they're kind of buddies and they're best friends, and it's very awkward.
Yeah.
You're not there to be their friend. You're there to teach them right from wrong. And I'm not a super authoritarian guy like my dad was. I don't get the belt out and beat my kids. But there's a happy medium there where you are the disciplinarian, and you got to teach them these life skills. You're not there to be their best friend.
Yeah. And, that's a one thing that you really hit upon that is far different, I think, from today compared to like my father, born in 1930, and is the parents of that generation. They were in a lane, so to speak. They didn't vary that much from parenting style. You had this style that was your parent. Today, like you said, one parent might say, "Oh, yeah, let's go watch that rated R movie. I think it's fun." Or, "Hey, oh yeah, whatever you guys want, have your friends come over. You can watch that movie." Whereas the other parent would say, "That's not appropriate for you and your age."
Yeah.
But my friends do it. My friends' parents, like you said, so many different parenting styles now. How do parents work around that?
Yeah, I don't address those specific, kind of parenting, the differences in that. Just the issue for the social media, the mental health issues, and just the lack of leadership skills. As a commander, that's really what I've seen and had a large part of writing the book. 18 to 25 years old, their resiliency, they lack it completely. The ability to overcome very simple obstacles. They want to be management on day one. It just blows my mind. I've had a couple of airmen, great individuals that have been in the military of less than 6 months, and we're already talking about kind of leaving because they hadn't been promoted and they hadn't done this or that. And boy, let's start with step one. I need you to do, an officer basic course, and then there's some of the other commissioned officer courses. And before we get up to, promoting you to general here, let's just start off here at second lieutenant, and why don't you master some of these basics of leadership first? And for me, it was just so different than, me coming in as a second lieutenant in, I was 2000, the year 2000, so April of 2000. And it's I guess it's been 24 years, and things have changed, but it's a challenge that I'm up to, and we're doing a very good job at our squadron.
That's fantastic. And I mean, everything that you're talking about, I'm not a parent, and my siblings, their kids are grown up in the 30s and stuff, but I see it with their kids, and I see it with other friends' grandkids, and it's just got to be such a difficult place to be for
for people in command, in charge, and parents. Like I said, there's a lot of kids now that feel as though they are entitled, and I do see a lot of my people that I know, their grandkids, they go to work. 2 weeks later, they quit. Why did you quit? Well, they told me to do this, or I didn't like the way they're talking to me. Like, do you want to work? Well, not really. So, all that, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, it was
It's
just a different mindset, and that's our job, as the adults and leadership to teach those standards, and people aren't meeting those standards. We've got to have those discussions and let them know why. But you can't lower the standards because that's how accidents and complacency and there's been a kind of a push out there at times where people have felt the answer, well, the bar is too high, let's just lower it. That is not the answer. And that comes from the mindset of, some of this generation where everybody's a winner, everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a ribbon, and that is not real life. Real life, there are winners and losers, and if you lose, it's not anybody else's fault but yours. So what could you do differently? What can you learn from? Winning is hard. Getting an Olympic gold medal is hard. That takes work. So there's winners and losers, and if you want it bad enough, then you'll work hard for it. And if you're not willing to work hard, then you don't get it. That's winning and losing.
it's a lot of the words that you're using are so powerful and so meaningful. And what I mean by that is, the big word to me is standard. There used to be standards, and I don't see standards now. And like I said, a lot of times that we end up lowering the standard for certain things just so everybody can achieve. well, well, then what happens? Well, then we have nothing. We have deterioration of stuff. Things don't work. Why? Well, we lowered the standard, so you didn't have to really be that good at it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that folks know where they can go to find your book, your website, and everything. And it's waitbehindthespear.com. Is that correct?
Yes. So weight, WEIGHT, waitbehindthespear.com.
Now, tell us a little bit more about the book. Can we talk about it as a guide or a blueprint to help
Yeah,
people look at things and understand?
Yeah, you put it in very simple terms. I'm a physician. So this is my prescription for America. We have to recognize that there's a problem first. If you don't see the problem, it's kind of hard to change course and address a problem if you don't know that it's there. And for people that don't know about the mental health crisis that's really kind of gripping this country and affecting this generation, or the lack of leadership, they do now. And this is my prescription. This is what we're going to do for that call to action. We need to harness the best resource that we have, teachers, coaches, families, volunteers, and get them engaged. It could be different for everyone. There's people have different skill sets. So whether you're volunteering in your church or your school, maybe you get out there and coach Little League. Maybe you just love animals and you want to go out there to some adoption centers and humane centers and work on adopting for families. I mean, pets play a very integral part in anxiety and depression. They have great studies out there. These emotional support animals make all the difference. So maybe you just love animals. Get out there and volunteer at your local shelter. But there's something for everybody. Everyone has a strength. Everybody has a weakness. And when you talk mental health, everybody has a breaking point. So, it's not get tougher, just grind it out. It's everybody has a breaking point. And the examples I'll use is you have some special forces operators. These are people on the most elite teams on planet Earth. They are mentally extremely sharp. They are physically Olympic level athletes or even better. And you still see suicides in that population. So life happens. Everybody has a breaking point. And recognize that. Have a team around you, whether it's your spouse or family, friends, coworkers. We call it a wingman in the Air Force. Someone that you can bounce ideas off and check in on from time to time. Around the holidays, you'll see some suicides, and just be there for each other. This is America is a wonderful place, and that's our best resource.
That is something good to have somebody that you could call your wingman that's going to have your back, that you're able to bounce things off of, and to, I think, be able to be honest to that person if you're the wing person, and for the person who's asking your wingman or your wing person to listen to them. I say that too because I have some close friends, and I know when they ask certain things of certain other friends and things, and then they say, oh, they told me that I'm doing this, I don't believe I am. Well, they're that outside person looking in, and you ask them, and now you don't believe what they're telling you. So, how do we change our minds? Say I'm that person that doesn't believe that outsider is saying, hey, you know what, your behavior, you're doing some things that are odd, and I notice that you're not yourself anymore. Is something going on?
Don't have an ego about it. Surround yourself with good people, and trust them. If I've got a good friend that's talking to me and telling me something that maybe I don't want to hear, I try to be very open. Everyone has their own biases, of course, but just take a little moment to reflect, and is there some validity to that, and maybe bounce it off a couple other people. But don't let your ego get in the way of stuff like that. That's how accidents happen. So I'm a flight surgeon in the Air Force, and so in aviation, they've got some great studies. There was a Korean Air study, more than probably a decade or two ago, where the different hierarchies and the egos that you'll see in like the Korean culture, they've got different levels of communication. And it's, like if you're talking to at the time when you were talking, they have a recorded conversation, a black box from an accident, where the first officer and the captain of an aircraft, they were flying straight into a mountain. And the first officer was, sir, mountain is getting a bit close, isn't it, sir? Basically, when you break it down, he couldn't say, because of the hierarchical structure, you would never talk to a superior in the manner that probably needed to happen at the time. And they've addressed that with aviation safety, of course. But like, sir, you're flying into the mountain, pull up the plane. He has to use these innuendos, and they fly the plane straight into the mountain, killed everybody. And so on the accident investigation, that's one of the things with like crew communication and the hierarchy structure that had just contributed to that. When you're looking at your CRM and your crew resource and management, those types of things, don't let your ego get in the way of those stuff. That causes bad things.
Yeah, that darn ego.
Yeah.
Is there one thing that you could tell, say, and I don't like using the word issue or problem, but we'll say the 18 to 24-year-old, if there's one thing that you could tell that person about life and what they have to look forward to and what they need to do to make better choices or things better for themselves, how would you guide them?
Yeah, take ownership of your life. What you do every day does matter. It's no one else's fault. It's your fault. There's been some great coaches. I'm trying to remember. There was a coach that did one of the commercials. I think it was like a Coors Light commercial where, you play to win the game. And like, you are what your record says you are. Just no excuses. Take ownership of that. Everyone, not everyone has the same advantages as others, for sure. But at the end of the day, you're the one making those decisions. And just blaming other people is never going to get you where you want to go. You have to take ownership of yourself and your career, and what you do every day matters. So do something that matters. A lot of people discount their role in their communities, and that's very powerful. The things that you do every day matter. So take ownership of that.
Yeah, I think two things. Like I said, we're never too small to make a difference. We can always do something that's going to affect something. So you can make difference, you can make change in yourself or in your community. I think also, here's what I want to ask. Do we all have our individual choice? Do we have choices? Because I hear a lot of people say, well, I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice. Do we have a choice?
There are always choices.
Okay.
Now, and there's one of the chapters on overcoming obstacles. So a good colleague of mine, name's Kiwan Amy, and he wrote a book. I probably even have it here, but I got a copy of it on the bookshelf hill. But here it is. So this book right here, Don't Focus on Why Me by Kiwan Amy. I've known him for quite a few years. He had a horrific accident. He was leaving Air Force drill, driving back home towards Durham, and he's riding a motorcycle. It's a beautiful day for a ride, and he had someone pull out right in front of him at high speed. Now you got two choices. They're very, very bad choices, but you still have a choice to make. Do you veer off to the left into oncoming traffic and hit somebody head on? Or do you want to drill the car right in front of you and see what happens? It's a split-second decision. It's a horrific decision to have to make. Certainly not fair to Kiwi, but it's a decision that had to be made, and he drove straight into it. He flew off, suffered severe injuries, and was left blind. And the way he described it to me is literally as his face is grating across the concrete like a cheese grater, it ripped off his eyelids, and while he was unconscious, like the sun baked his cornea. I mean, it's horrific. And what he has gone through, what I've watched him go through, and then obviously read the book and used some of his story in my book, it's just an incredible story of just overcoming obstacles. There's always a choice. And sometimes they're not great choices, but there's always a choice. And then you deal with the repercussions and you hopefully learn from that. I do that in medicine every day. I have to make choices to sacrifice one organ system for another. Where if I had an individual choice, like I would never make the choice to do this to the kidneys, but in this particular situation, I've got a medication where, their heart, or they might die if I don't do this, but if I don't do this, then the other one gets sacrificed. So you're always balancing all of that, where individually you would never make that decision, but in the context of that decision right there, I've got to make a choice and I got to sacrifice one for the other, and that's just decision making.
Yeah. Like I said, oftentimes it's a hard decision to make,
Yeah.
but we do have that. We do have choices,
Yep.
right or wrong. It's take accountability and
Yep.
take hold of your life.
You take ownership of it, and you'll be better for it. I mean, you'll learn from those decisions and those choices. Maybe like I said, they may not have been great choices to choose from, but you're going to make a choice and you'll learn something, and that ownership will. Coach K, so great leadership when I was at Duke University, and that was his big points when he gave us a leadership lecture when I was an assistant professor at Duke University. And his teams, I mean, he talked about the 2008 Olympic team that he led. All these guys are making $30 million a year, crazy amounts of money. LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, I mean, big, big names. But on his teams, it's about, accountability and ownership. You take ownership in that team, and there's standards, not rules. I learned a lot from Coach K on that one. Those are really important lessons.
Wow. I know we're just scratching the surface on everything that is in your book, but I just want to touch, if we can, a little bit on mental health and mental health issues that are happening in America, specifically, today, both for the youth, the young, and for even a little bit older, because we do see things on the news about folks in their 40s that do something, and we watch the news and we think, well, they must have cracked mentally, or what happened to them, or why. So what is going on with all this mental health? What's happening?
Yeah. So in some of the younger population, I definitely am seeing a pretty significant increase, and I do attribute a lot of that to some of the policies and decisions that were made during COVID. We shut these kids out of school, shut them out of churches. They're just so isolated during those critical years. That clearly has a long-term effect, and we're starting to see some of that now. And then, in some of the older population, I don't necessarily think it's getting worse or there's more. It's just people are aware, and you talk about it. And we have a Suicide Awareness Month. It's not something that you just sweep under a rug and forget about it and just toughen up. That's not the answer. That's how people kill themselves. So, it's just more recognition for that, and people getting that mental health, and it's obviously a growing issue in awareness. I don't think it's necessarily getting any worse. It's just people are more aware now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, technology and the internet and news is everywhere. So you're right. We
Everybody
are.
can go to Google, MD Google, Doctor Google.
Yep.
I s- every day there's probably three, four, five people that come to the emergency department with just some off the wall wild diagnosis, and I entertain it. I sit down, we chat about it, and you just kind of laugh. That's why you don't have AI like running emergency rooms. I mean, it's great with a lot of things, but decision making and people. I mean, there's always crazy people coming up with hilarious complaints. You take it very serious, and we talk about it. And I don't think you have metastatic pancreatic cancer right now. That's I'm not saying it's not a possibility. So we'll talk about it. But I mean, you've had the sniffles for about 3 minutes, and I don't think that's a symptom of cancer. But I mean, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. You know.
I laugh at that because you're so right. Dr. Google.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would imagine people come into you and say, I've well, they don't say I've diagnosed, but I have this, and I believe I have whatever ailment it is. Why do you think that? Well, I looked it up online,
Yeah.
and this is what it said, and yeah, I was coughing for 3 minutes, and then my eyes started to water, so I have some sort of paralysis happening.
Yeah, but it happens enough that it's usually one of the questions you'll ask, like, hey, like, what brought you in today? What is it that you're worried about? You're on Google. I mean, you just ask it up front, and it kind of helps you know because it's managing their expectations and then addressing why they came, right? You just kind of walk in and tell them, hey, you're fine, nothing's wrong. It doesn't really help anybody. So it really kind of helps to know where they're coming from. So at least I can address it, and then they feel like you've talked to them about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you one last question on the mental health. Is there any one thing that you could think of that you can say to people out there who might be going through a time of depression? What can they do when they wake up in the morning? Something simple. Do you have any suggestions just to
Yeah.
make them
No,
feel better?
they that feeling, they're not alone, and it's okay to feel that way. So there's a lot of guilt and the anxiety that goes with that. There are tremendous resources out there, and you're not alone. There's a huge amount out there, but just trying to get them to recognize that there's a problem and admit that that's a problem or that they're depressed, and recognizing those symptoms is the first step. So I mean, talk to your primary care doctor, talk to a friend, aunt so and so, maybe a nurse. Just talk with a healthcare professional, and they can get you pointed in the right direction. The emergency department is always open for you. I take a lot of pride in being the safety net for America. People know that the emergency department is always a place to go. I see a lot of crazy stuff all the time, and wild, insane amounts of volume with the kind of the worried well at times. But it's always a safe place to go, and we're always there for you.
Thanks for the direction and advice on that. And I just want to one more time remind everybody out there that you could go to weightbehindthespear.com, and that's WEIGHT, not WAIT. So we're talking about the weight, that force.
Yeah, thank you.
Gosh, again, we're just scratching the surface, and I mean, we could talk, I bet, for hours about
Yeah.
all this stuff.
And it's kind of I think the crazy background, military, a little time with the State Department, physician. I wear a lot of hats, but I enjoy each of the unique challenges that those kind of career fields and experience have provided, and try to take advantage of opportunities.
Well, I'd like to think that I have a good judge of character, and I'd say that definitely you're one of those guys that has your head on straight. You've got a direction, and you know what you're doing, and I believe.
It drives my wife crazy sometimes because I can't change who I am. That's just the way it is. I'm definitely not perfect, but I definitely know where I'm going and why.
And that's what a lot of us need to know is and have that direction, know why we're going that way, and also to understand that we are not perfect. Not one of us on this planet Earth is perfect. Well, I think we're all learning every day, but so
Yes.
it's like I said, I hope I have a good judge of character, and I think I do, and just listening to you and all the logic that you have behind everything that you said is making me think this guy absolutely knows what he's saying, and I should listen,
I
and I should
appreciate
read.
that. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in 20 some years in medicine, so I usually
I bet you have.
have a good story for about everything.
Uh, well, I do want to ask one thing before we close out, though. It's because you did mention Deadpool the movie. I got to ask you, two questions. Do you have a favorite movie? And do you have a favorite car?
Boy, favorite car. You know, I'm not much of a car guy. I love cars. I mean, but when I was in Iraq, I had some pretty close experiences, and you see your life flash in front of your eyes a couple of times. You learn very quickly that, you know, in that combat zone, like nobody cared like what kind of car you drove, how much money you make, or how big your house is. Nobody cares. You're just gonna live or die here. So the day I landed in theater, they shot down one helicopter. Like it was one of our helicopters. The day I got there, they had shot down 8 helicopters in the 2-week span before I got there. They killed a flight surgeon. His name was Colonel Allgood. I was scared out of my mind, and I just it was a couple week process of a whole rewiring of my brain. I wasn't suicidal. I just figured I was probably going to die and had to get over it. So it just really changes who you are. So, but I mean, like some of the sports cars that are out there, I can't even think of one right off the top of my head. Just some fancy
That's
cars,
okay.
other kinds of cool stuff. And what was the first part of the question?
Do you have a favorite movie?
Yeah, favorite movie. Big military history buff. You know, Full Metal Jacket was one of my favorites. Lee Ermey, the drill sergeant in there, was just such an iconic role and character. The one-liners from that movie. Like I said, I was born in the 70s, so I've lived in that shadow of the Vietnam War my entire life. And when I do my speaking engagements, I always ask if there's Vietnam veterans in the crowd and thank them because they had a much different experience than I had when I came home from war. So, yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites.
All right. Well, with your answers, I would put you in the guy from the 50s. All American. There it is.
Oh, thank you.